I'm Eleanor Vance, 34 years old. For as long as I can recall, my younger sister Chloe has consistently claimed what was rightfully mine. My cherished toys during childhood, my fashionable clothes as a teenager, and my moment in the spotlight at every family gathering. Yet nothing could have prepared me for what she seized at my recent birthday celebration at the Silverstone Bistro last month. As she stood there, brazenly announcing her pregnancy with my spouse Daniel, I felt my entire existence fracturing beneath my feet. What both of them were oblivious to was a secret I had meticulously guarded, a truth so potent it would forever demolish their flimsy illusion. Before I delve deeper into this narrative, please share where you're tuning in from and hit that appreciation button if you've ever navigated the complexities of a challenging family member. Believe me, you'll want to discover the conclusion of this tale. Growing up as Chloe's elder sister felt akin to dwelling in a perpetual eclipse. From the instant she entered the world when I was 6, my parents showered her with preferential treatment, as if she were their cherished gem. Chloe was adorned in more exquisite dresses, enjoyed more extravagant birthday festivities, and inexplicably always secured the final slice of dessert. It wasn't that my parents withheld their affection from me. Rather, their adoration for her was simply more conspicuous, more fervent. "Behold Chloe's artistic flair," my mother would exclaim with delight as my sister haphazardly doodled with crayons while my stellar academic reports were met with mere acknowledgments. "That's adequate, Ellie." My father enthusiastically coached Chloe's swim team, but perpetually cited busyness when it came to my chess tournaments. These subtle rejections, accumulating over the years, erected a formidable barrier of unspoken resentment that I desperately strove to ignore. Chloe's pattern emerged early. Whatever possession I held, she coveted. My beloved stuffed bear mysteriously relocated to her chamber. The cardigan, for which I diligently saved my allowance, would vanish from my wardrobe, only to reappear draped over her shoulders. When I secured the leading role in the school's annual theatrical production, Chloe abruptly professed a newfound passion for performance and persuaded our parents to enroll her in costly acting workshops. "Why can't you simply share with your little sister?" became the household refrain, invariably directed at me, never at her. Consequently, I learned to cling tightly to the things that held the most significance, safeguarding my aspirations and my inner peace with resolute vigilance. University provided my much-needed escape. I relocated 4 states away to attend Sterling University, a distance ample enough to prevent Chloe from trailing behind. Those 4 years proved to be utterly transformative. Liberated from Chloe's overshadowing presence, I truly blossomed. I cultivated genuine friendships with individuals who cherished me for who I was. I unearthed my profound interest in digital marketing and public relations. And during my 3rd year, I encountered Daniel. Daniel Peterson entered my advanced digital marketing seminar with disheveled auburn hair and the most authentic smile I had ever witnessed. He inadvertently spilled his hot cocoa the inaugural time we conversed, stammering apologies as the liquid splattered across my meticulously organized notes. Instead of irritation, I found his nervous demeanor endearing. He promptly offered to treat me to dinner to compensate for the mishap, and I readily accepted. That initial dinner seamlessly transitioned into breakfast the following morning, where we conversed until the dawn, discussing our aspirations, our family backgrounds, and our cherished literary works. "I've never encountered anyone who understands me quite like you do," he confessed that evening, and for the first time, I felt truly seen. Our relationship flourished. Daniel embodied everything I had ever envisioned: attentive, compassionate, ambitious, yet never at the expense of others. We graduated together, relocated to Oakwood City, and meticulously built our professional lives in tandem. When he proposed after 3 years beside the serene waters of Lake Crest at sunrise, I genuinely felt as though I had finally discovered my enduring happiness. Then came the preparations for the wedding, and with it, Chloe's inevitable re-entry into my existence. She had completed her studies by then and was employed as a sales representative for a wellness company, a role that appeared to prioritize social engagements over actual sales figures. When I telephoned her to share the news of my engagement, her reaction was, at best, unenthusiastic. "Oh, well, congratulations, I suppose. Is he financially secure?" These were her initial words, devoid of any genuine joy or well wishes. Despite my deep reservations, I extended the invitation for Chloe to be my chief bridesmaid. My mother adamantly insisted, claiming it would cause her profound distress if I didn't. Looking back, the warning signs were undeniably present. At my pre-wedding celebration when Chloe arrived dressed in ivory, or at the rehearsal dinner when her toast focused more on herself than on me. However, I was determined to transcend these past grievances, to prevent old wounds from tarnishing my newfound happiness. The wedding ceremony itself was exquisite, despite Chloe's persistent efforts to command attention, arriving late for photographs, weeping dramatically louder than my mother during the vows, and openly flirting with Daniel's groomsmen throughout the reception. Daniel observed her conduct and reassuringly clasped my hand. "He's merely envious because you are so extraordinary," he whispered, and I found myself believing him. The initial 2 years of our married life were idyllic. We acquired a quaint residence in the suburban district, progressed significantly in our professional endeavors, and began discussing the prospect of starting a family. Daniel and I agreed to postpone parenthood until we achieved greater financial stability, though I harbored a suspicion that his hesitation stemmed from other unarticulated reasons. Nevertheless, I respected his prudence and dedicated myself to nurturing our relationship and careers. Then, approximately a year ago, a subtle shift began to occur. Daniel started working longer hours, his phone consistently placed face down on surfaces. He grew meticulous about safeguarding his passwords, startled whenever I approached him while he was typing messages. The intimacy between us gradually diminished until our connection felt more akin to housemates than affectionate partners. "It's simply the pressure from the new senior role," he would explain, whenever I attempted to address the growing chasm between us. "Once this major project concludes, everything will revert to normal." But normalcy never returned. Instead, the emotional distance expanded. I found myself scrutinizing his phone records, noticing frequent calls to an unfamiliar number. I detected an unfamiliar fragrance on his shirts, distinctly not my perfume, nor anything I owned. On one occasion, I discovered a long strand of golden hair on his jacket. Chloe, of course, had long golden hair. I tried to convince myself I was being overly suspicious, that my ingrained childhood insecurities were distorting my perception. After all, Chloe resided in the same metropolitan area, but we rarely encountered her except at mandatory family gatherings. Why would Daniel be involved with her? As my 34th birthday approached, I harbored hope that it might mark a turning point. Daniel had been particularly aloof, but he promised to make my birthday exceptionally memorable. My parents decided to arrange a family dinner at the Silverstone Bistro, my preferred dining establishment. I devoted extra time to preparing that evening, selecting the sapphire gown Daniel had once remarked enhanced my eyes, styling my hair precisely as he favored. I was resolute in my desire to rekindle our connection, to find our way back to each other. Gazing into the mirror before our departure, I softly murmured to myself, "Tonight will be different. Tonight will be a fresh start." I had no inkling how prescient those words would prove to be, though certainly not in the manner I had anticipated. The Silverstone Bistro provided the ideal backdrop for what I envisioned as a restorative evening. The restaurant's inviting amber illumination and exposed stone walls had always imbued me with a sense of comfort. The aroma of freshly baked bread and fragrant herbs permeated the air as the maitre d' escorted me to our reserved table. Daniel had sent a text stating he would join me there, citing an unavoidable last-minute business call. "Ms. Vance," the maitre d' smiled, "your family has already taken their seats." My parents rose as I approached the table, my mother's expression softening in that subtly restrained way that signified her pleasure at my presence, yet her effort to temper overt emotion. My father offered a brief embrace, patting my back somewhat awkwardly. "Happy birthday, darling," he murmured, presenting me with a modest gift bag. Nothing extravagant, just a little something your mother selected. My mother lightly touched my hair. You look quite lovely, Eleanor, though you might consider reapplying your lip gloss before photographs. Typical. I hadn't even settled into my chair, and she was already identifying an area for improvement. I mentally filed away the critique with all the others and offered a polite smile. Thank you for arranging this, Mom. It truly means a lot. Chloe had yet to arrive, which was hardly a surprise. She had perfected the art of tardiness, ensuring all gazes would converge upon her when she finally made her grand entrance. I checked my phone for any messages from Daniel, but found none. Daniel is running a bit behind, I explained as I took my seat. A work matter. My father nodded sympathetically. That's how it is when you're advancing in your career. Your Daniel is a diligent professional. The server approached to take our beverage orders. I requested sparkling water, still holding out hope of sharing the initial toast with Daniel. My parents exchanged a subtle glance. Go ahead and enjoy some wine, dear, my mother encouraged. It's your special day. Before I could respond, a distinct stir emanated from the entrance. Chloe had made her appearance, and as was her custom, she ensured everyone took notice. Her laughter resonated through the dining area as she dramatically swept her golden hair over her shoulder. She was clad in a form-fitting crimson dress that left little to the imagination, attracting appreciative looks from nearby patrons. What truly made my heart seize was her companion, Daniel. My Daniel, holding the door for her, his hand briefly grazing the small of her back as they weaved through the tables. Their proximity was too close, their smiles too intimate to simply be in-laws who coincidentally arrived at the same moment. Apologies for our delay, Chloe announced, leaning in to brush my cheek with a practiced exactness that left no trace of lipstick. I just happened to encounter Daniel in the parking area. Fortuitous timing, wouldn't you agree? Daniel carefully avoided my gaze as he settled into the seat beside me, his hand briefly squeezing my shoulder in what felt like an apologetic gesture. Happy birthday, Ellie. My apologies for the holdup. I noticed he smelled freshly showered, his usual fragrance more pronounced than usual. The excuse about a work call suddenly felt flimsy. No issue, I responded, maintaining an even tone. I'm just pleased everyone is finally here. The server returned, and we proceeded to order our meals. My parents dominated the conversation, recounting anecdotes from their recent cruise and the latest neighborhood landscaping dispute. Chloe frequently interjected with tales of her most recent sales triumph or the supposed celebrities she'd encountered at a recent industry convention. Daniel remained uncharacteristically quiet, offering contributions only when directly prompted. Beneath the table, I extended my hand to Daniel's knee, seeking a tangible connection. He flinched imperceptibly before covering my hand with his own. His palm felt clammy. Is everything all right? I whispered, while my father was engrossed in his golf story. Fine, Daniel replied too swiftly. Just fatigued. The gifts arrived next. My parents presented me with a rather impersonal voucher for a large department store. Daniel handed me a small container holding delicate emerald earrings that appeared costly but utterly uninspired, as if selected in haste. Chloe's offering was a luxury silk scarf that I strongly suspected she had originally acquired for herself and decided to re-gift to me at the last moment. It's precisely your shade, she insisted, though the dull olive green was a color I would never willingly wear. The server then delivered the molten chocolate cake I had specifically requested in lieu of a traditional birthday confection. As he placed it before me, my father raised his glass. Before we commenced singing, I wish to propose a toast to my eldest daughter on her natal day. Eleanor, you have consistently exemplified responsibility. Your mother and I are proud of the steady existence you have cultivated. Steady, not exhilarating, not remarkable, merely steady, as if I were a dependable pack animal rather than a daughter commemorating another year of life. As the server ignited the solitary candle on my dessert, I observed Chloe shifting with palpable excitement in her seat, exchanging significant glances with Daniel. A knot of apprehension tightened in my stomach. Actually, Chloe interjected before we could begin the song, I have a personal announcement to share. I believe it would serve as the perfect complement to Ellie's birthday celebration. All attention converged upon her. She rose, deliberately smoothing her gown over her abdomen with pronounced emphasis. I had not intended to disclose this just yet, but since we are all gathered, she paused for dramatic effect, her eyes gleaming with triumph as they locked onto mine. I am expecting... The ensuing silence lasted mere seconds, but stretched into an eternity. My mother gasped with sheer delight. My father's countenance broadened into a smile, wider than any I had ever witnessed directed at my own achievements. That's simply wonderful, darling, my mother exclaimed. When is your due date? How far along are you? Approximately 10 weeks, Chloe replied, her hand still resting possessively on her stomach. But there's more. And at that precise moment, she unleashed the bombshell that would utterly demolish every shred of reality I thought I knew about my life. Daniel is the biological father, Chloe announced, her voice resonating with a twisted pride that sent a chill down my spine. We have been romantically involved for several months. We are now destined to become a family. The ambient hum of the restaurant continued around us, but at our table, time itself appeared to halt. My father's glass froze midway to his lips. My mother's smile crumbled into utter bewilderment, her eyes darting frantically between Chloe, Daniel, and me as she struggled to comprehend the inconceivable. Daniel stared fixedly at the tablecloth, his complexion drained of all color. This was not how we intended to inform you, he mumbled, steadfastly avoiding my gaze. We, I repeated, the single syllable somehow escaping my constricted throat. Chloe reached across the table and placed her hand over Daniel's. We had planned to wait until after the first trimester, but I simply couldn't contain my joy any longer. Her eyes met mine, glittering with malicious triumph. We are now a family, Ellie. Daniel and I are going to raise this child together. The calculated malevolence of her timing on my birthday at my favorite eatery in front of our parents was truly breathtaking. This was not the result of a sudden burst of passion or a fleeting lapse in judgment. This was an elaborate performance meticulously orchestrated for maximum devastation. My mother was the first to regain her voice. I don't comprehend. Daniel is Eleanor's husband. She stated this simple fact as though reminding everyone of an overlooked detail. Not for much longer, Chloe retorted with a dismissive flick of her wrist. They've been experiencing difficulties for ages. Daniel and I didn't deliberately plan this, but when true affection blossoms, one cannot resist it. True affection, as if the bond Daniel and I had forged over 9 years was somehow counterfeit. Eleanor, Daniel finally looked at me, his expression a sickening blend of remorse and underlying relief. I sincerely apologize. I never wished for you to discover it this way. Chloe and I. It merely transpired. Merely transpired, like an unexpected downpour or a deflated tire. Not a months-long treachery necessitating thousands of deliberate choices to lie, to deceive, and to demolish. When? I inquired, surprised by the unwavering steadiness of my voice. When did it merely transpire? Daniel shifted uncomfortably. Does it truly matter? It commenced at your holiday gathering, Chloe interjected, clearly relishing her role as the chronicler of my humiliation. Recall when Daniel and I both vanished for a period? You believed he was assisting me in locating my lost earring? She emitted a tinkling laugh, a sound that grated against my nerves like shattered glass. He certainly found something, all right. 6 months. While I meticulously planned romantic anniversary surprises and carefully scheduled intimate evenings to reconnect, my husband and sister had been clandestinely involved behind my back. Every late evening at the office, every cryptic text message, every feeble excuse suddenly coalesced into a pattern of betrayal so flagrant I could scarcely believe I had overlooked it. I believe, my father stated slowly, setting down his wine glass with exaggerated care, that this discussion would be more appropriately continued in private. But Chloe was far from concluding her theatrical performance. "There is no necessity for privacy, Father. We are all kin here." She smiled, gently rubbing her still flat abdomen. "And shortly, there will be one more Peterson joining us. Isn't that thrilling? Your first grandchild." My mother, predictably, seized upon this detail as if it were a lifeline. "A grandchild," she breathed, her eyes softening as they invariably did for Chloe. Well, the circumstances are unconventional, but a baby is always a divine blessing." I observed in disbelief as my mother began to mentally recast this catastrophe as a joyous family development. Naturally, she would. Chloe had consistently been granted impunity for anything. Her transgressions, through the peculiar alchemy of my parents' favoritism, were transformed into triumphs. "Ellie," Daniel tentatively touched my arm. "Can we speak about this privately?" I gazed at his hand on my arm as though it were an alien object. This very hand that had clasped mine through my grandmother's funeral, that had slipped a wedding band onto my finger, accompanied by vows of eternity, that had, it now seemed, been touching my sister with equal intimacy. "I require the ladies' room," I announced, rising so abruptly that my chair scraped loudly across the floor. No one attempted to hinder me as I departed, my legs somehow propelling me forward despite feeling entirely disconnected from my body. The restaurant restroom was thankfully unoccupied. I locked myself inside a stall, pressed my forehead against the cool metal door, and awaited the inevitable emotional collapse that surely loomed. Yet the tears never materialized. Instead, an unusual tranquility descended, a clarity I had not anticipated. This treachery, while profoundly devastating, was not, in essence, a surprise. Chloe had been systematically appropriating what was mine for our entire lives. Daniel had exhibited signs of his susceptibility for months. This was merely the inevitable culmination of long-established patterns. I splashed chilled water onto my face and fixed my gaze upon my reflection. The woman staring back at me seemed subtly altered, perhaps more resilient but also more sharply focused. I reapplied my lip gloss with steady hands. "You will not shatter," I instructed my reflection. "Not here, not for them." When I returned to the table, they were engrossed in discussing names, actually discussing baby names, as though this announcement had been met with universal jubilation rather than irrevocably shattering my world. Daniel appeared dejected but resigned, nodding as Chloe rattled off various options. "If it's a male child, I'm contemplating Daniel Jr., she articulated, though we could certainly use Peterson as a given name. Peterson Vance has a rather pleasant ring to it, don't you concur?" Vance, my married surname. She was already staking a claim to it for her progeny. "Or for a female, perhaps, Danielle." "A bit too on the nose," she chuckled, touching Daniel's arm with a possessive air. I slid back into my chair, all eyes swiveling toward me with varying degrees of apprehension, culpability, and, in Chloe's instance, thinly veiled anticipation. She awaited my complete collapse for the dramatic outburst that would solidify her narrative as the composed, rational one, stepping in to care for a distraught Daniel after his emotionally shattered wife disintegrated. Instead, I offered a serene smile. "You have certainly ensured this will be a birthday to remember," I remarked calmly. "But if you don't object, I would prefer to savor my cake before it completely loses its form." Chloe's smile faltered, confusion clouding her features. This was not the reaction she had meticulously choreographed. Daniel appeared equally perplexed by my composure. "Eleanor," he began, "we should discuss future arrangements." I raised my hand. "Not at this moment, Daniel. Right now, I intend to enjoy my birthday cake." I picked up my fork and took a deliberate bite of the rich chocolate cake, briefly closing my eyes to relish the flavor. When I opened them, I noticed all four of them staring at me as if I had suddenly sprouted a second head. "What?" I inquired innocently. "Did you anticipate I would break down, create a scene or flee in tears. My apologies for the disappointment. Chloe was the first to regain her composure. We merely thought you would be more distressed. Oh, I am, I assured her, taking another mouthful of cake. But unlike certain individuals at this table, I do not feel the compulsion to publicly display every emotion. Furthermore, I added, setting down my fork, there is something you all should be aware of before we continue this discussion. The subtle tremor in my hand was the sole external indication of the emotional upheaval raging within me. I took a slow sip of water, carefully marshaling my thoughts. For months, I had been diligently assembling pieces of a puzzle I had actively tried to avoid completing. Now, confronted by Chloe's self-satisfied declaration, those pieces clicked into place with devastating clarity. I have been aware of the affair for 3 months, I stated quietly. Daniel's head snapped up, his eyes widening in shock. Chloe's triumphant smile wavered. What? Daniel managed to stammer. You really ought to update your email password more frequently, Daniel. Utilizing our anniversary date was hardly a secure choice, especially once your behavior became so suspicious. My mother gasped. Eleanor, this is hardly suitable conversation for a dinner table. I turned to her, my voice laced with steely resolve. Nor is announcing an affair with your sister's husband at her birthday dinner, Mother. Yet, here we are. Back in early spring, I had borrowed Daniel's laptop when mine unexpectedly crashed before an important work presentation. A notification had appeared, an email from Chloe with the subject line, "Last night." My finger had hovered over the mouse. Principles of privacy battled with a growing, unsettling suspicion. In the end, suspicion prevailed. The email had been explicit, detailing their intimate encounter in Daniel's office after working hours and making reference to several preceding rendezvous. My world had fractured that very day, but I had kept the knowledge to myself, requiring time to process, to strategize, to protect myself. After I discovered those emails, I continued, I engaged a private investigative firm, Maxwell and Associates. They are exceedingly thorough, Daniel. They possess photographic evidence of you entering Chloe's apartment building on 27 distinct evenings. They have recordings of your telephone conversations. They even hold the receipt from that jewelry establishment where you purchased the bracelet she is currently wearing, the one she claimed was a gift from a grateful client. Chloe instinctively clutched the gold bracelet on her wrist, her veneer of confidence visibly fracturing. You've been conducting surveillance on me? Daniel's voice rose with indignation. That constitutes an invasion of privacy. I chuckled, a genuine laugh despite the profound gravity of the moment. That's rich, coming from the individual who intruded upon my marriage, but rest assured the investigation was entirely lawful, unlike adultery, which remains grounds for fault-based dissolution in this jurisdiction. My father shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Eleanor, perhaps we should... I am not yet finished, I cut him off. 2 months ago, I retained Clara Donovan. She is recognized as one of the preeminent divorce attorneys in the metropolis of Lakeside. The necessary legal documentation is already prepared, Daniel. I have meticulously cataloged everything, secured copies of all our financial records, and implemented measures to safeguard my assets. Clara advised me to await the complete compilation of my evidence before confronting you. Daniel's face transformed from shocked to ashen, then to a faint green hue. Chloe glanced between us, her earlier triumph dissolving as she realized she was not delivering news. She was inadvertently stepping into a meticulously laid trap. You have been planning to divorce me? Daniel inquired hoarsely. All this time? Yes, I replied simply. I was actually intending to serve you the papers next week. Chloe's impulsive announcement merely accelerated my timeline. My mother's eyes welled with tears. But Eleanor, a divorce is so utterly final. Surely with counseling? Mother, I interrupted gently, but with unwavering firmness, there is no possibility of recovery from this. And there is one more crucial detail you should all be aware of. I directed my gaze specifically toward Chloe. Something that renders your announcement particularly noteworthy. I reached into my handbag and extracted a folded document I had been carrying for weeks, patiently awaiting the opportune moment. I had never conceived that such a moment would transpire at my very own birthday dinner. Daniel underwent a vasectomy 2 years ago, I declared, sliding the medical report across the table. We collectively decided that children were not part of our future. He expressed no desire for the responsibility. Chloe stared at me, then at Daniel, a slow dawning of comprehension spreading across her features. "That is impossible," she whispered. "You are fabricating this." "Verify the document," I retorted. "Lakeside Medical Center, Dr. Miller." The procedure was performed 26 months ago. Daniel recuperated on our living room couch, engrossed in the spring basketball tournament. I distinctly recall having to continuously provide him with frozen peas for the swelling. Daniel appeared on the verge of succumbing to nausea. "Ellie, I can explain." "Explain what?" Chloe interjected, her voice rising in pitch. "That you had a vasectomy and deliberately withheld this from me? That you allowed me to believe—" She abruptly ceased, realizing the full implication of her words. My mother was scrutinizing the medical document with trembling hands. "Is this truthful, Daniel?" Daniel's silence served as sufficient confirmation. I turned to Chloe, whose complexion had completely drained of color. "So, my dear sister, if you are genuinely pregnant, congratulations are certainly in order, just not for Daniel. He's, as they say, firing blanks. So, who is the true father? Do you even possess that knowledge?" The restaurant's ambient noise had significantly diminished. Nearby diners, now unequivocally aware of the intense drama unfolding at our table, shifted uncomfortably. Chloe's eyes darted nervously around, acknowledging the sudden attention, her carefully constructed moment of triumph crumbling around her. "This is a grave error," she insisted feebly. "Those medical records must be erroneous." "They are not erroneous," Daniel finally admitted, staring intently at his hands. "I should have informed you, Chloe. I didn't believe it would carry any consequence. We were utilizing contraception regardless, or at least we were supposed to be. I never envisioned, You never envisioned she would attempt to ensnare you with a pregnancy that could not possibly be yours." I completed his sentence for him. "Amateur error, Daniel. You should have recognized that Chloe invariably operates with an ulterior motive." Chloe abruptly stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "I require some fresh air," she muttered, grabbing her handbag and practically bolting towards the exit. Daniel appeared conflicted, his gaze flitting between me and Chloe's retreating figure. "Proceed," I stated coolly. "Follow her. You two are perfectly suited for each other." After a brief moment of hesitation, Daniel rose and swiftly pursued Chloe, leaving me alone with my utterly stunned parents. My father cleared his throat. "Eleanor, I am at a loss for words." "There is nothing to articulate, Father." I picked up my fork once more and took another bite of my cake. It tasted like ash now, but I was resolved to finish it. This was, after all, my birthday celebration. Except perhaps that Chloe might now require a different kind of medical professional, one who can assist her in identifying the actual progenitor of her child. My mother was silently weeping, streaks of mascara marring her cheeks. "How can you remain so composed? This is a catastrophe." I gently placed my fork down and looked her directly in the eyes. "No, Mother. A disaster implies something unforeseen and unavoidable. This situation was entirely foreseeable and completely preventable. Chloe has been appropriating what is mine since our early years, and both you and Father have continually enabled her. The sole distinction now is that this time I was prepared." I signaled the server for the bill. "I believe our celebratory gathering for this evening has concluded." The restaurant had become uncomfortably quiet. The tables nearby no longer made any pretense of not listening to our unfolding family drama. I signed the check with steady hands, adding a generous gratuity for the server who had been compelled to witness this unfortunate birthday dinner. As I completed my signature, I observed Daniel returning, alone, his face pallid. He slid back into his seat, running a hand through his hair in that familiar gesture I once found endearing. "Where is Chloe?" my mother inquired, dabbing at her eyes with a napkin. "She is in her vehicle," Daniel replied. "She is distressed." "I imagine discovering you are not the father of her conveniently timed pregnancy would indeed be distressing," I remarked, my voice deliberately neutral. Daniel looked at me with pleading eyes. "Ellie, can we please speak privately? There is so much I need to clarify." "Is this accurate?" My father's gruff voice cut through the tension regarding the vasectomy. Daniel nodded reluctantly. "Yes, sir. 2 years ago, Eleanor and I discussed it and made a decision." "You decided," I interjected. "You were the one who did not desire children. I was willing to wait." "The essential point is," Daniel continued, "it was a mutual decision within our marriage. I should have informed Chloe, but matters between us were intricate." "Intricate," I scoffed without humor. "That is certainly one way to describe engaging in relations with your wife's sister." My mother literally clutched the strand of pearls at her neck, as if they might offer some semblance of stability amidst this chaos. "I simply cannot fathom how this transpired. How could both of you inflict such harm upon Eleanor?" Before Daniel could respond, Chloe reappeared, her face blotchy from crying, but her composure somewhat restored. She slid into her chair without looking at anyone, her arms wrapped protectively around her midsection. "I apologize for my abrupt departure," she stated, her voice lacking its customary confidence. I required a moment to myself. The server approached cautiously. "Is everything satisfactory with your meal? Would anyone care for coffee or dessert?" "Just the bill, please," I responded. "I have already signed it." "Wait," Chloe said suddenly. "I wish to offer an explanation." She surveyed the table, her gaze eventually settling on me. "Eleanor, what occurred between Daniel and me? It was not premeditated. We never intended to cause you pain. And yet you chose to announce it at my birthday dinner," I pointed out with such impeccable timing. Chloe possessed the grace to appear momentarily abashed. "That was wrong. I believed it would be simpler with family present. I did not consider how it would impact you." "You never do," I stated quietly. "That is the fundamental issue, Chloe. You have never once considered my feelings when appropriating something that belongs to me." "Daniel does not belong to you," she retorted, a flicker of her customary defiance re-emerging. "He is an autonomous individual, not a possession." "He was my husband," I countered, "the man who pledged to love and honor me, and you were my sister, who should have respected that solemn commitment, even if he did not." My father cleared his throat. "Regarding the baby, Chloe, if Daniel is not the father—" Chloe's eyes filled with fresh tears. I am unsure what to articulate. The dates appeared to align perfectly. I genuinely believed— "Who else could it possibly be?" my mother inquired, her voice barely above a whisper. Chloe stared intently at her lap. "There was someone else before Daniel. He is also married." My father groaned audibly, burying his face in his hands. "Chloe, for heaven's sake." "I terminated that relationship when things became serious with Daniel," she insisted. "But the timing— I suppose I miscalculated." I found myself unable to restrain a laugh. The sheer absurdity of the entire predicament finally pierced through my carefully maintained composure. "So, allow me to clarify. You were engaged in an affair with a married man, then commenced a relationship with your sister's husband, became pregnant by the first married man, and then attempted to present the child as my husband's." Stated in such a stark manner, even Chloe seemed to finally grasp the horrifying symmetry of her actions. It was not like that at all. I truly believed Daniel was the father. Well, he isn't, I stated definitively. And now you have a significant decision to make regarding whom to inform. Daniel, who had remained uncharacteristically silent, suddenly spoke up. I believe I also have some decisions to make. He turned to Chloe. You assured me I was the sole individual, that it had been months since you had been with anyone else. Chloe reached for his hand. Daniel, please. I made an error, but what we share is genuine. He gently withdrew his hand. Is it? Or am I merely another item you acquired from your sister? The question hung heavy in the air, laden with profound implication. Chloe recoiled as though she had been physically struck. My mother, ever the conciliator, attempted to salvage the unsalvageable. Perhaps we all require some time to process this. It has been a shock for everyone. That is an understatement, my father muttered under his breath. I rose from my seat, smoothing down my gown. I concur, that would be prudent. Daniel, my legal representative will contact you next week. In the interim, I would appreciate it if you found alternate accommodation. Daniel looked up at me, desperation etched in his eyes. Eleanor, please, can we not at least discuss this? We are far beyond discussion, I replied, surprising even myself with the absolute finality in my voice. You made your choice months ago. You simply lacked the courage to communicate it to my face. I turned to my parents. Thank you for the birthday dinner. It was, without question, unforgettable. Eleanor, wait! Chloe called out as I gathered my handbag. You cannot simply depart like this. I paused, looking at my sister, truly seeing her. Beneath the flawless cosmetics and designer attire, I discerned something I had never previously noticed. Insecurity. A profound, relentless insecurity that had propelled her to compete with me throughout our entire lives. I am not abandoning anything, Chloe, I stated softly. I am walking away. There is a fundamental difference. I sincerely hope you ascertain what you intend to do regarding your baby and its actual father. That is no longer my concern. As I exited the Silverstone Bistro, I felt a peculiar lightness. The sting of betrayal lingered, a wound that would necessitate time to mend, but for the first time in my life, I was not burdened by the oppressive weight of Chloe's shadow. I had, at long last, stepped into my own light, entirely on my own terms. In the parking area, I inhaled deeply of the cool evening air. My phone vibrated with a text message from Daniel. Please return home. We need to converse. I deleted it without a response and drove away, leaving behind the wreckage of what had once constituted my life, heading to a future built entirely by me. The ensuing weeks proved to be a rapid succession of legal consultations and organizational arrangements. Laura Beaumont, my divorce attorney, was an indomitable force. She systematically dismantled Marcus's position, presenting the evidence from the private investigator with composed precision. Marcus attempted to retaliate, to assert claims of emotional distress and manipulative conduct on my part, but the facts were incontrovertible. The electronic correspondence, the photographic documentation, the vasectomy report. Each piece of evidence served as a definitive indictment of his and Victoria's deceit. My parents, caught squarely in the relational crossfire, appeared to finally comprehend the profound extent of Victoria's actions, and remarkably, Marcus's complicity. Their historical favoritism towards Victoria seemed to dissipate, replaced by a strained silence and sporadic, hesitant apologies directed towards me. It was not a complete acknowledgement, but it represented a nascent step. Victoria conversely presented an entirely different challenge. She oscillated between outbursts of fury, assuming the role of the aggrieved party and attempting to manipulate the unfolding circumstances. She tried to establish contact with me multiple times, each message a convoluted mixture of accusation and feigned remorse. How could you inflict this upon me, Pen? Upon Marcus? We truly loved each other. Or, you are merely envious because I have finally found happiness. I promptly blocked her contact number and all her social media profiles. I had severed the connection, and there was no prospect of turning back. The paternity of her unborn child swiftly became a messy, publicly whispered secret within our extended family. The married man she had been seeing prior to Marcus was inevitably drawn into the dramatic unfolding, his spouse ultimately initiating divorce proceedings as well. Victoria's meticulously constructed life, built upon a foundation of falsehoods and manipulation, was irrevocably crumbling around her. Marcus relocated from our residence, taking only his personal effects. The initial silence in the house was jarringly loud, but it rapidly transformed into a comforting tranquility. I proceeded to redecorate, paint walls, and rearrange furniture, consciously eradicating every vestige of him and the painful memories. I spent my evenings with my genuine friends, who had rallied around me with unyielding support. They offered a listening ear, provided solace, and celebrated my minor triumphs, such as the day the dissolution of my marriage was officially finalized. It occurred with surprising swiftness, given the irrefutable evidence I possessed. The financial settlement was equitable, ensuring my financial security and enabling me to reconstruct my life without undue hardship. One bright Saturday, several months after the divorce, I was in the process of consolidating Marcus's remaining belongings for donation when I discovered a small, wrapped package at the bottom of a dresser drawer. It was intended for my birthday, the one he never managed to present, overshadowed by Victoria's dramatic announcement. I carefully unwrapped it. Inside rested a delicate silver chain adorned with a small, intricately intertwined P and M charm. A wave of unexpected melancholia washed over me, a fleeting pang of sorrow for the man I believed I knew and the future I had once envisioned. However, the feeling quickly dissipated. I gazed at the charm, then at my reflection in the window pane. My P no longer required an M to complete it. I was whole, entirely on my own. I gently placed the necklace back into the box, sealing it shut. It was not a part of my new beginning. Life steadily continued to progress. I immersed myself completely in my professional endeavors, achieving significant success in my digital marketing career. I commenced enrollment in pottery workshops, an activity I had always harbored a desire to pursue. I encountered new individuals, explored novel hobbies, and rediscovered the inherent joy in life's simple pleasures. There were still occasional days when the sting of betrayal lingered, a phantom ache serving as a reminder of the past, but such days grew increasingly infrequent. I heard fragmented updates concerning Victoria, a challenging pregnancy, the difficulties of being a single parent, her ongoing disputes with her ex-partner, and the actual biological father of her child. I felt no sense of satisfaction, only a quiet, steadfast resolve. Her choices had led her down that particular path. Mine had unequivocally led me to liberation. One serene evening, I found myself seated on the tranquil shore of Lake Crest, the very location where Marcus had proposed. The sun was descending, painting the sky in vibrant hues of crimson and gold. I closed my eyes, recalling the hopeful young woman who had stood there 3 years prior. She was transformed now, stronger, wiser, and more authentically herself. I opened my eyes, a gentle breeze rustling through my hair. The lake stretched out before me, vast and placid. The future remained unwritten, brimming with boundless possibilities, and for the first time in a very long time, I was genuinely eager to author it, autonomously and unburdened, finally released from the pervasive shadow that had trailed me for so long.